Today, we are continuing our coverage of local elections, connecting you to the candidates. With 4 out of 7 school board seats up for grabs in Duval County, the August 20th primary will be one of the most consequential in school board history. It may also be one of the most political. And I'm joined now by Duval County School Board District 3 candidate Cindy Pearson. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning.
You can also call with questions or comments. We're at 904-549-2937. You can also send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. So Cindy Pearson, District 3 includes San Marco, Lakewood, Spring Park. How do you characterize District 3? And you're an incumbent. Why do you want to continue representing it?
Sure. I love my district. I have gotten to know, so there are 22 public district-run public neighborhood and magnet schools within District 2, and then 8 or 9 charters within District 3. And it's a diverse district. I have 3 or 4, I think I have 4 dedicated magnets, elementary, middle, and high school. I have neighborhood schools. I have schools that have a majority of English language learners in them. I have schools that are ranked in the state performance-wise. So it's a really diverse district, but I love it. I have one of the largest high schools in the district. It's going between Sandalwood and Atlantic Coast to see who's the largest. So it's a really interesting district to represent. Why do I want to continue? I've really enjoyed supporting the schools. I have enjoyed getting to know more about legislative policy and how policy and laws affect what happens in the classroom. I want to continue that work. I also have built relationships with the principals and with staff in the schools, and feel like, in this case, experience and relationships matter. And I would like to continue building on the good work that we've been doing.
I'm intrigued that you say you enjoy it, because I watched some of those school board meetings, and it doesn't look like a lot of fun to be up there on the dais. It seems very often very contentious. How do you manage that, and how do you say that you enjoy that? I mean, is that part of the job that you also enjoy, or you just endure?
Well, the meetings are one part of the job, and that's the forward-facing or public-facing part. But I do a lot of work that you don't necessarily see. As far as the meetings go, I'm happy to hear from the public. We invite the public into our meetings, and I value hearing from them. I also hear from the public in terms of emails. When people ask to meet with me, I meet with them. When people leave a phone number, I call them back. So I'm interacting with constituents and members of the public all throughout the week. The meetings do get kind of long with some of the public comment, and some of the comments, especially the ones directed at us personally, are rough sometimes. But overall, that's part of hearing from the public and giving people a voice in what's happening in their school system.
We are getting some calls and comments from your constituents. Sharshan on the south side. Good morning. Go ahead, Sharshan.
Good morning. It's Sharshua. Hi, Cindy. I just first and foremost want to thank and commend you for all of your work these past 3.5, almost 4 years, and also being one of the school board member who actually does respond to all the constituents. That is very important, and we thank you on behalf of us. But when it comes to the budget and the school closures, what are your priorities? What are your top priorities?
It's a good question, and obviously there is a consolidation plan that is stemming from budget problems.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of schools potentially on the chopping block for closure, including at least 4 in your district. So how do you plan to address that? What is your response?
Sure. So we are in a situation with our budget where our expenses outweigh our revenue. And so we do need to make some decisions, and some will be tough decisions. When we had the discussion on March 11th, where there was a list that was produced that's now not a list, apparently, I was pretty angry at that meeting, actually, because I felt like we had a third of the conversation that we needed to have, and there were names put out there that should not have been considered for consolidation or closure. So I have been asking for a rubric or some kind of baseline for how we're making the decision on how we're going to close schools. And then we line them up and we talk about mitigating factors to take schools off of that list. And that would be a starting place. So we are in the middle, near the end of a process of community engagement. We had 7 meetings, one in each board district. And now we have a citizen focus group panel that has met. Staff is working on a rubric, and then we'll be presenting to them on July 31st and August 1st. And then after that process, it'll come to the board, and we will have our discussion.
And when you say the list that's no longer a list, what do you mean by that?
There were, in the presentation on March 11th, there were schools that were listed or named for closure, and you mentioned that there were several in my district, in District 3. The community saw that as a closure list. And so we have been working hard to let people know that nothing is final, nothing's decided. The board will be voting in the fall.
Okay. We've got a call from Yasmina in Arlington. Good morning, Yasmina. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to call in. My question is, seeing as though Cindy is looking to rerun for another term, what is her vision for DCPS?
Good question.
Thank you. Well, I mentioned one, the budget, I think, is one of our primary items that we have to get under control. No organization can continue with their expenses outweighing their revenue. Student achievement is the primary focus of any board or board member. It should be. And so while we've made great gains in our ELA or reading scores, the district saw an increase in every grade level this year, half in math, several good gains in social studies and in science. That work needs to continue. We need to look at our weaknesses and figure out how to support students and support staff so that we can see increases across the board and working towards our goal that the board put out in our strategic plan, which was to move from the bottom 25% to the top 25% of schools in the state of, or districts in the state of Florida.
How do you deal with state policy that has redirected funding in many cases away from traditional public schools and to options like vouchers or charter schools and the resulting funding loss? There is that deficit in large part due to this major shift in Florida policy when it comes to public education.
Well, that is true, and that policy comes from our state legislature and our governor, and so there's not a lot that I can do to change that. We definitely have a legislative agenda, and we have been working on some small changes. There was a list of deregulation bills last session. I've heard that there will be another round of deregulation bills. So through the legislative priorities, we can address the things that we can address. But when it comes to what's on the books, we deal with it. I have been a big proponent of competing for students. So when we put out our questions to the semifinalists, each board member got a question. Mine was, Florida is wide open for school choice. How are you going to compete for students? And that is something that I talk with Dr. Bernier about, that we need to figure out how to compete for students.
Dr. Bernier, the new superintendent.
The new superintendent.
Do you think that the district does a good enough job about communicating the reasons for the budget problems? Do you think that it needs to do more in terms of communicating that change, that statewide shift in the way that we approach and fund schools?
I think starting after the March 11th meeting, the district did. Before that, I don't think that the district was very clear in how the changes in legislation were affecting the district.
Okay. We've got a call from Olivia in Lakewood. Olivia, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, my question is, there's been a lot of conversation about what makes you more qualified or your opponent more qualified. Can you talk about, in addition to your role on the school board, what you have done in schools that gives you leverage or that you believe gives you leverage in the race and makes you qualified to continue to represent our district?
Thanks, Olivia. We should mention that you are facing Becky Nathanson in the August primary. We've invited her on the program And she initially agreed, but we haven't been able to agree on a date. And in the past few weeks, I should say, we just haven't been able to reach her. So I'm not sure if she's going to be on, but tomorrow you are both scheduled for a debate at the Jesse Ball DuPont Center at 6:30 p.m. That's Tuesday, July 23rd. So with that said, how do you differentiate yourself from your opponent?
Sure. Well, I think experience matters. And I would start back with experience as a DCPS mom. I have 3 children. 2 have graduated from a DCPS high school, and my youngest is going to be a junior. They went to elementary, middle, and high school in DCPS. I engaged as a very active parent, volunteer in their schools, and so I have an experience and also a record of trying to build into neighborhood schools. The second is experience on the school board, understanding policy, understanding budget, understanding how legislation affects what happens in the classroom. But also, I set a goal of volunteering in each of the 22 schools. I've made it to about 8 to 10, I think, of them so far, but I have volunteered as a pre-K para. I have volunteered as a 9th grade ELA teacher for the first week of school when there was a shortage. I have done campus cleanups and been to SAC meetings and really engaged with my schools, so I know the district pretty well, and like I said, have relationships already.
So your opponent in this is supported by Moms for Liberty, and very recently the race has taken a pretty negative turn with some mailings that are pretty accusatory, I think, of you, and maybe making allegations that you would protest in terms of their accuracy. But how much do you see politics coming into those flyers and taking the race, perhaps its focus away from the kinds of things we've been talking about?
That's a great question. I would say that I don't think anyone likes to be misrepresented or have their positions or their work misrepresented, and especially in such a public way. Again, I can't control what anyone else does. From our end, we have tried to talk about who I am, the experience that I have, the vision that I have for Duval County Public Schools, what I think the priorities are, and then make a contrast between me and my opponent.
And I want to ask you, you formerly worked in D.C. for an organization called Campus Crusade for Christ. They have a position on LGBTQ issues that holds that same-sex attraction is contrary to God's design. Is that a belief that you also hold in terms of the community of gay and lesbian and transgendered individuals?
So along with that statement that Cru has made, I will tell you the practical experience in the local Cru ministries, college ministries, is that they are open to anyone who wants to come and join in. And so my position would fall along with, I do think that is what the Bible says. My practice as a board member is to create safe and supportive environments for all students. And so I have visited the GSA clubs at my high school and middle school that has one to find out how we can resource them. I really do want our schools to be safe and supportive for all students.
A reminder that JPEF, the Jacksonville Public Education Fund, is hosting a debate tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. It is free, and you can register on the JPEF website. Cindy Pearson, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.